Okay, you're gonna learn something new today. It's kind of the last kind of equation you kind of are gonna learn to solve in here. And here's the thing. And I'm gonna write a little note here. Now, a lot of people see this, and by the way, there's a second power here, so second power. So that means there are two answers we have to find. Okay. Now you can't do the rainbows, so and I'm going to write Y right here. So Shelby, just kind of read what it says. Can't use rainbows because of the second power. Okay, so kind of focus on that note I wrote. The second power blocks you from being able to use rainbows. Okay, that won't work because everything in this parentheses belongs to the second power belongs to everything in that parentheses. Or also you also don't want to duplicate it. So don't. A lot of people try that and they make the problem harder than it needs to be. Don't write it out twice either. Okay. Because there were problems we did a while back where we wrote x minus 4 times x minus 4 and then multiplied it out. We don't want to do that. Okay, here's a trick that I kind of came up with that it's always worked well for me. I like to have people circle the parentheses and use what's called a fake variable. And the variable I like to use is a capital Q. Okay? So I bring a Q variable down. Why I use Q? You can use any variable, but I use Q because we don't see it very often, so I won't get it confused. Okay, now Q is going to have a multiplying number of 6, and it's also going to be to the second power, and then I know that it's equal to 42. Okay, so I'm going to put a box around that. We don't have to add or subtract. We need to divide by 6. And 42 divided by 6 is 7, and then we have Q to the second power. Okay, now to get rid of a second power, the opposite of a second power is a square root, okay? Because the square root and the second will cancel out, and that just gives me Q. So now I go to the calculator, and I'm going to need to find the square root of 7, okay? And that ends up being 2.64 or 65, okay? You can put it whichever you want. So, but it could be the positive or the negative, okay? Because anytime I find the square root of a number, a negative times a negative could equal a positive number too. So I need to watch out for that. Now, after I solve for Q, I'm going to make this kind of chart here, and I'm going to set up two equations. Okay, now, we know that this Q can equal positive 2.64 or it could equal negative 2.64. But what Q actually is the x minus 4. So now I bring back x minus 4. And I put a 1 in front of the x, box it, I plus 4, and I take 2.64 plus 4, and then 1x is going to equal 6.64. So there's my first answer right there for the x. Okay, and then I put a 1 in front, and then I plus 4, and then negative 2.64 plus 4 is 1.36. Okay, so I'm going to get decimals for answers on these, most of them. Okay, next problem. I have a second power, but that second power belongs to an entire parentheses. So again, I'm going to use the Q variable. So I have Q. There's nothing in front of it, but we have a second power behind it, okay? And by the way, anytime we use Q, I kind of always go to this chart because I'm going to need to use it. And the chart helps me not to forget, okay? Because a lot of people get this answer and they'll put those two answers there. With that chart, I know I won't mess that up. So I have a second power, so I'm going to square root both sides. Okay, so Q equals, now remember, when I squared a number, it could be the positive or the negative. And I find the square root of 5, and that's 2.24, or 23. If you want to put 2.23 or 2.24, it doesn't matter. So the q is equal to 2.23, or it could be equal to negative 2.23. And then I can bring in the x minus 3, because that's what q really is the x minus 3. Okay, so I plus 3, so 1x is equal to 5.23. So there's your first answer. And then I plus 3, and negative 2.23 plus 3 is 0.76. Okay, so there are my two solutions. Okay, my next one, again, because I see a second power, there's two answers. And the second power also blocks me from being able to multiply. Okay, so I circle that. We have q, we have a 4. The q is to the power of 2, minus 2 equals 38. Okay, so again, we're going to use q. I'm going to make this chart off to the side. And there's going to be two equations because I'm going to have to use the square root. So I'm going to end up with a positive and a negative to set those equal to. Plus 2, so I have 40 and 4q to the second. So we divide out the 4, and q to the second equals 10, and then I find the square root of both sides. Okay, so we take that away. And then I'm going to find the square root of 10 on my calculator, because these numbers a lot of times aren't perfect squares, so they're going to be like decimals. Okay, so I could have this equal to 3.16 or negative 3.16. Okay, and then I put the x plus 2 in. So x plus 2, 1x, 3.16 minus 2 is 1.16, so there's your first answer. And then x plus 2, so minus 2, and 1x equals negative 5.16. Okay, so those are your two solutions, approximately, because I rounded them. Okay, now the next one, there's no second power, okay? See, like here you have a second power. Well, here you don't, so there's only one answer. So since I don't have a second power, we can't forget how to do the rainbows, okay? So I'm going to do the rainbows, and that's a plus negative. So I'm going to get 4x plus negative 12, 36. Then I box my x term up. We have a negative 12, so I'll plus 12, plus 12. So 4 times x equals 48, and I divide by 4, and I get 12. So I can do that the old way if there's no second power with the rainbows, the distributed property. Okay, there's supposed to be a second power here. You can't really see it very well. So two answers. And I can't distribute because of the 2 right there. So I'm going to circle that, and I'm going to use my q. Okay, so we're going to have a multiplier of 2 and the q's to the second power, and that equals 18. Okay, now I don't really have to add or subtract. I do need to divide by 2, and q to the second equals 9. And then I find the square root of both sides. So that cancels. And remember, that could be a positive or negative, and the square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so 3 and negative 3. And then I bring in x minus 4. So plus 4, 1x equals 7. And then plus 4 and plus 4, negative 3 plus 1 is 1. Okay, 7 and 1. Okay, my next one, there's only one answer because we don't have a second power. Okay, because there's no second power there, I can go ahead and multiply through. And we're going to get 5x plus negative 10, and then plus negative 6 equals 32. Okay, so I box my x up, and there's two numbers we have to move to the other side so we can have like terms on opposite sides. So plus 10, plus 6, plus 6. So I've got 5x, and then 32 plus 10 is 42, plus 6 is 48. And then I divide by 5. And 48 divided by 5 is going to be 9 point, I think it's 9.6. Yeah, it is. Okay. So there's my answer. Okay, only one of them because there's no second power. Okay, my next problem. There's two answers because of the second power, and that means I can't multiply through because the second power is blocking me from multiplying the 3 through there. Okay, so I'm going to bring in Q. We're going to have a 3, a second power, and then 18. So I box that up. We divide out the 3, and that equals 6, and we got Q to the second. And I find the square root of both sides now. And that can be a positive or negative, so I can square root 6. So 2.45. Okay, so that means I can be equal to positive 2.45 or negative 2.45. And then I bring in my x minus 4. Okay, so I put a 1 in front and I plus 4, plus 4. So 1x is equal to 6.45. There's your first answer. And I plus 4, plus 4. Negative 2.45 plus 4, and that's 1.55. Okay, and then our last problem. There's a second power, so we use there's two answers, and that means I can't multiply through it. So instead I replace it with Q, and it's 5Q to the second minus 3 equals 32. Okay, so I minus 3, it's going to be plus 3, and that equals 35. And then you got 5Q to the second. Then I divide by the 5, and Q to the second equals 7. Now I find the square root of both sides. Okay, we can cancel the second power. And then remember, a square root of a number could be a positive or a negative. Okay. That's 2.64 or 65 if you want to round it. That's fine. I don't want you to get all bogged down with the rounding part. So 2.64, a lot of teachers freak about rounding. I'm not one of them. And the reason why is because it gets in the way of learning the process. So minus 6, minus 6. And I take 2.64 minus 6, gives me negative 3.36. Okay. And then I minus 6, and I have 1x. Negative 2.64 minus 6 is negative 8.64. All right, guys, that's really all I want to say that today. There's 4 practice problems. I hope it's been informative. And number 4, you're going to go through here because you don't have a second power. There's only one answer.